it's Massian from alphablogdesigns.com, and today I thought we'd have a look at the principles that make up C.R.A.P. Now, if you've never heard of C.R.A.P before, don't worry, we're going to be explaining what it is in a few minutes' time. If you have heard of C.R.A.P before, then just stick around. We've got some interesting examples that show us just how to apply the principles properly. First, of course, is contrast. Now, contrast is really just exactly what you might think it is. It's using different levels of contrast to highlight or to mute different elements of a design. And it can be used in many ways and can be used extremely effectively. And a great example of contrast used well is found over at Jeff Croft's personal site at jeffcroft.com. Now, whenever you arrive on Jeff's page, the first thing that sticks out is his logo on the left hand side here. It takes prominent position in the top left hand corner, and as it rightly should. And its colour makes it for something that would stick out of the page. But when people come to Jeff's site, what is it that they're coming for? Are they coming to see the date when he last posted? Are they coming to see the comments or how many comments have been left? That may be the case, but primarily when people visit his site, like any other site, they're coming to see what he has recently written. And so Jeff uses contrast to highlight what is important for the visitor when they arrive, and that is the article. And so when you arrive on the page here, the headline and the body text of the article have much higher contrast than the other elements of the page. They stick out, and the rest of the design mutes into the background in accordance to importance. And if you just look at the page here, you'll see the headline here standing out and the body text standing out, and then the other elements that aren't so important, like here in the sidebar, the recent blog entries and the dates of those entries in particular that really aren't that important. So Jeff keeps them extremely muted here, and some have even complained that it's far too muted and there's not enough contrast. But the idea is, if it's not important, don't give it prominence. If it is important, make it stand out, and that's what Jeff has sought to do here. The next principle is, of course, repetition. And repetition is basically where things are the same or similar, then make them the same. Like the headlines of a page, don't use different fonts for headlines of articles. If you have various articles on your page, make all the headlines the same. Use the same font, use the same colour, use the same size. And that makes perfect sense, but isn't always used as effectively as it could be. And Rob has done an excellent job in using repetition in its proper sense. Again, looking at the headlines here, you see this particular font being used, and the particular colour and the particular size. And of course, this is the latest post, latest article, so it gets prominence with slightly larger headline, but the same headline is used in the sidebar and for the older post down here at the bottom. And that helps just to balance the page out so that you know where the headlines are. If it brings out the various individual elements of the page, and your eye, if you are looking for something in the sidebar in particular, maybe like the archive, you don't have to read all the text to find out where the archive is. You just skip down and see about this site, and then there's a subscribe, and then photography. Oh, and there's the archive there. And it just helps you to work around the site that bit faster and helps all visitors. The third principle of C.R.A.P is alignment. And alignment, again, is something that's fairly simple, but isn't used the way it should be used in order to balance out a design. Basically, what alignment is making sure things line up. You don't just stick a logo somewhere on the page, you line it up with a certain padding, certain margin, along maybe with to align up with the navigation that's maybe on the right hand side of it or whatever. Things ought to be aligned, and alignment ought to be used in every web design. And using an example again, Andy Rutledge here, I think this is a fairly recent design he has put together. He uses alignment as it ought to be used. Starting at the top, you see here the three main navigational elements: the home, show, and about. They're grouped together here, and they align perfectly with the column that runs below. Now, there's a very strict grid here in use, and that just helps to align things a bit better. It helps to group things. It makes the elements of the page look like they have their place. They're not just thrown together. And there's these three columns here, and again, you can just see him even using contrast to highlight the importance and the prominence, and using size to help that as well as you go across. And you go down, you then have these six columns here, and again another six columns below that, and then down into these two columns in the footer. And no matter what column you line up and look at, it lines up with something. It has its place. There's a purpose for why it's there, and how it came to be there. And I think this ought to be known by all of us, but it's not. And just look at this. If you run a line right up this page, from anywhere at all, everything has its place, and that is something, if you are a designer, you should be looking into, and it just will help polish your design immensely. The fourth element of C.R.A.P is proximity, and maybe the least known of all the principles. Proximity really is about grouping things together according to relevance or relation. If a certain element is related to another element, keep them together so that people know they belong together, so they know that they are related. If things are not related, if they have no correlation, or they have no need to be close together because they're totally different elements, then keep them apart. Use a space, use white space to segregate things. And again, as a final example, we're looking here at Jesse Bennett Chamberlain's personal site and portfolio. And here at 31.3, proximity is used the way it ought to be used. If you go down the sidebar here, you can see he's got a side links, and again, the spacing between the lines is ample, but there's more spacing when you move on to a new line here. So if this spacing here was the same as what's used here, then there'd be confusion. You'd think it was all just one large paragraph, but it's not. The things are different, so there's a little bit more space used and to help with the proximity of things, and so people understand what they're looking at whenever they come to the page. And again, for the larger units here, we've got the side links, it's all one unit, but then that's broken up from the authentic jobs, which are another unit, and then the recommended. And everything's just broken up into units, and spacing is used to help keep things together or to separate them. That's really all I wanted to say on C.R.A.P. See you.